Hello and welcome to the programme. I'm Tom Bell and you're watching UATV. Joining us is the famous Russian composer and singer Aleksandr Manotskov. Aleksandr, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And,
likewise.
It's been a long time in the waiting. Well, first of all, we've got a lot to discuss, but can you tell us what you're doing in Ukraine this time and the project that you're involved in?
Well, this particular time, I'm here to present a program of songs. It's 12 songs. I've been composing them for over a year, which is a very long period of time for me, because I usually do things quickly. But for a long time, it has been my dream to make a program of songs to Ukrainian poems. Because it's like a side project for me that's been ongoing for almost 5 years now. Apart from being just a composer, so just a boring guy who sits at his desk, scribbling something, I have this kind of side project of where I sing my own songs with a string quartet. So I usually refer to it as my rock band. So, which I think is fair, because a string quartet is actually has become a form of a rock band, quite legitimately, throughout the last, I don't know, 40 years probably.
With all the glamour that goes with it. Obviously.
Yeah, since the Beatles or Nick Drake, it is a legitimate rock band. Yeah. So I've written several song cycles in Russian to Russian poets and even to my own lyrics. But this time it's set to Ukrainian poems of various times, stretching from Serhiy Zhadan, for example, my favorite contemporary Ukrainian poet, back to Shevchenko and the likes, and with various poets in between. Of course, I do not mean that this is that I exhaust the entire spectrum. No, I simply thought for a long time I've been reading the Ukrainian poetry in Ukrainian, enjoying it immensely, and just every once in a while I'd say, yeah, this is the one I want to pick. I want to turn this into a song, and I did so. So finally, I've completed this cycle this summer. And now we're making it, it has become a concert program, and we're presenting it at Gogolfest, the famous Gogolfest.
Well, the Arts Contemporary Festival that's taking place at the moment.
Theatre and Music Contemporary Festival run by the famous Vlad Troitsky. And it's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to present this work at this festival. And it's happening on the 10th of September, that is tomorrow. Yes. At 3 p.m. It is a peculiar time for a show, but it is so because there's so many things happening at the festival, and it's an uninterrupted flow of things. Yeah,
so it's just dozens of events happening at the same time.
If you're interested, you can check it on the festival website. There's a lot of things you might be interested in, so you can come earlier than our concert, come to our concert, and after our concert you can look forward to many other things you might enjoy at the same venue or at another venue, so please check it on the website. Okay. It is interesting. So, and this time, so I'd like to, I have done this type of thing here before, because the nice thing about having a string quartet for a rock band is that you can have parts, written parts, that you can send in advance, have people rehearse them, and then you arrive and you can have like 1 or 2 rehearsals, and then you're ready for the gig.
Yeah, well, that's how a lot of different groups and musical groups, not just rock bands, but also orchestras.
But I mean, for a rock band, it's slightly more difficult, because in a rock band, you do not usually have a score. Yeah. You have, you do this thing, and you do that thing, and when you lose someone from the lineup, you lose the entire thing that they were doing, because it was their thing. Which is also charming and interesting, but in this case I have the advantage of having the score. So I'm both like the Beatles and the producer. I'm both them and McCartney.
That's a good comparison, actually.
And Martin. Yes, I don't mean the quality of the material there, but I mean the type of the modus operandi. That's how I work. I write the score, even though it's a rock album. I would call it a rock album. It's called Psalms and Dances, so you can both like pray and dance, which are 2 activities not so far away from each other, I'd say. And yeah, so this is why I'm here this time.
And it's really interesting. How did you choose these poems? Because you said you took a year to choose the 12 poems. It must have been a tough selection process.
No,
it wasn't.
It's just like I said. It's intuitive.
You just know when you see it, or when you read it.
Usually you do. Usually you do. I had decided that I'd use poets from different layers of time. But from the start, I had decided that I would not have this ambition to fully represent the entire spectrum of the Ukrainian poetry.
Well, I think you need more than 12 poems.
Yes, definitely. So please do not blame me for the selection that I left someone out or I overused someone. So it's very, very personal. It's very like subjective, which I think it should be.
Well, that's what most of these projects are. They are subjective.
Any artistic activity is, yes.
Well, fascinating. And obviously this is not your first time in Ukraine. You've been in Ukraine many times before.
No, part of my family has been living here from the late 1940s. So I've been coming here every summer in my childhood. So for me, Kyiv is a very personal place. It's like the town of my childhood, like place I've always been happy at. And so I only recently have I started doing professional things here.
Yeah. And why did you choose that, actually? I mean, what changed? Like, why only recently, do you think?
Well, I think that's partly due to my shifts of... So I finally... You know, it takes time to acknowledge a possibility. You have to readjust your thinking.
Yes, yeah.
And partly it's due to the fact that the situation here has changed tremendously in the last 5 or 10 years. We now have a booming new music situation here with many composers, with some lineups playing this music and specializing in contemporary music. And we have a great audience that is really longing to get this kind of thing. And so I think the situation has been changing here.
Yeah, and it's true. I mean, before the interview, we were saying that we had the Revolution of Dignity in 2014. There's also the Orange Revolution as well, 10 years prior to that. But this, I mean, this wasn't really what sparked the Cultural Revolution. The Cultural Revolution has that gone on for longer, do you think, or what's your opinion on that?
I don't know. I'm an outside observer. So
yes, yeah. Well, that's why it's interesting to hear.
I can't. Maybe I don't have enough information, but from where I stand, what I see is that unfortunately this cultural revolution is not getting as much attention and acknowledgement from the new authorities, the post-revolution authorities, as it could get. I think that it would be great if this new community got more support from the government.
Yeah.
Because many of these things, like, for example, the Gogolfest and Vlad Troitsky, many of these things are run privately.
Of course, social initiatives,
yes,
aren't they? That
so
people put their money behind.
They don't get much support, or they do not get any support from I don't know, Ministry of Culture or something.
Yeah, or from the state structure, at least.
I might be wrong. I might be wrong, but that's the impression that I have. That unfortunately, these people have been operating individually as a non-state community. For example, a couple of years ago, I was invited to a poetry festival, Kyiv Poetry Week, and I was surprised to find out that it was entirely run by a group of friends.
Yes, really.
And they were not rich.
So a grassroots initiative.
They were just a group of friends. Some of whom were poets, some of whom were poetry lovers, and they, you know, suddenly decided, why not have a poetry festival? And what kind of poetry festival would we like to have? And they pictured it, they fancied it, and then they had some friends who gave them some money, and they spent all of that money on that festival. Added some of their own money, you know, emptied their pockets, and so it happens. That's how it happens. Sometimes the venue where something happens may not look grand. Sometimes it may be on the outskirts. that's the modus operandi that's characteristic of this new cultural community in Kyiv.
But in a way, that's kind of nice. I think the fact that it's not sort of mainstream. It's very underground. I mean, in my opinion,
that's nice if you're making a movie about it 20 years later, or if you're 20 years later you are finally a successful artist who has survived that stage. But if you are in that stage for 10 years, for example, like Vlad Troitsky is, or then it may not be so nice, because after all, this is what you do. It's not your hobby. It's not like you have a 9-to-5 job and then you spend some time playing guitar at some garage. It's not that type of thing. It's something that this is what you do. So of course it would be nicer, and it would be nice if it got more attention from the authorities. But what is good about this? It's like you said, it's grassroots. It's something that the motivation of these people is purely artistic.
Yeah, well, they have a desire to make something, make a festival.
Yes, and obviously it's very important, and it's a huge strength. Yes.
And I'm really interested in how does this compare to Russia, for example, in terms of how the state supports culture?
Well, it's a sore question. Yes. Nowadays, you know, with all these things ongoing in Moscow and all this pseudo investigation around Gogol Center, that I'm wearing the sign of. You see that?
We can see it on your shirt.
That's Gogol Center. So I'm representing the Gogol Center at Gogolfest. I think Gogol is nice common ground for all of us. But in Russia we have grassroots underground thing, and we have all sorts of different things, because the Russian state or Russian cultural financing system, it's multi-layered. So on the very top, where there's lots of money, you have like the worst guys, you have the villains. But on other sub-levels, you might have people who decide to support something nice, something good, something progressive. As we now see with this sad example of Gogol Center, later on it may turn sour.
Yes.
So unfortunately, several people have been sent to prison and put behind bars, and we can't do anything to help them. So now this situation is changing. So some people have had this illusion that even though the rule in the country is authoritarian, and with all this wars going on, because now they're waging several wars, not only in Ukraine but also in Syria and so on and so forth. But still there's a possibility of do something even in this situation and use this money to do something good.
Yes,
which is reasonable to an extent.
So this does exist then?
Yeah, unfortunately, this space of possibilities, it has shrunk dramatically in the recent months and weeks, I'd even say.
Oh, really? So we're not even talking years then?
No, because, for example, one of my recent operas, Chadsky, was staged at Helicon Opera, which is one of the grand opera houses in Moscow, situated very close to the Kremlin in all. It was being rehearsed when the director of the opera, Kirill Serebrennikov, was snatched to the investigation committee for questioning. So 2 days before the premiere, the director was arrested, then released temporarily, and he's now under home arrest.
And for people who don't know, why was he detained?
What they say is that he's being accused of embezzlement of some money, which is complete rubbish. And after 3 months of the so-called investigation, they haven't been able to come up with any factual proof. They don't have any papers, any like invoices or whatnot, you know, to prove these accusations.
So what do you think was the real reason was then?
That's the question that keeps, you know, I'm puzzled when I'm asked this. It's like, imagine you have been hit with a baseball bat, And then someone asks you, why a baseball bat? What do you think?
That's a good way of putting it, actually.
What do you think? Why a baseball bat? And you're like, you're dizzy.
Yeah.
You're dizzy. How can you answer that? I don't know. I can't analyze reasons of bad people, people who consciously and willingly do evil things. Why do they do evil things? It's a fundamental question. I have no answer to that. I'm not a theologist.
But do you think that politics does affect culture? I mean, to what extent does this happen? I mean, this is just one example that you talk about. But do you think that this is more of a broader, I wouldn't say problem, but more of a broader challenge that the cultural community in Russia faces?
I think that it really is a broader thing. It's even broader than the cultural community thing, because the situations like the ongoing one with Kirill Serebrennikov and Gogol Center, they have been normal for the Russian judiciary system for the last decade at least. It's just that finally, eventually, it has come to this, that they even it even influences us. We have never thought that it would come to this.
Yeah.
Because thousands and probably tens of thousands of entrepreneurs, of small business or middle-scale business owners, they have been imprisoned on false or just no grounds, simply for their business to be taken away, or for bribe extortion, for something like that. And the country as a whole has been quiet about that. We haven't given enough acknowledgement.
There's not a voice
to that
for these people who've been.
So and now it's us. Now it's us. That's the change. It's not like nothing like this has ever happened. No, it has been a norm, sadly, in Russia for the last 10 or 20 years. And now this norm is extended to us.
Yeah.
This is it.
And it's interesting because before the interview we were also discussing how the cultures between Ukraine and Russia are similar. Often, people say Ukraine and Russia are at war. I mean, in my opinion, I think that obviously you have Putin's regime against Ukraine. It's not necessarily the country that's against Ukraine.
It is an intricate question.
What do you think about that?
In both countries, we have people who say that this war is not actually a war. In both, but it's something, as people would say, it's a complex matter. I hate this.
Well, that's an easy way to skirt the question.
I hate this. Because saying that something is a complex matter makes life easier for you.
Of course,
right?
Yeah, because you don't need to justify it.
It's a complex matter. You don't have to be. You don't have to take sides. I prefer to take sides. Clearly. So, so there are many people in Russia who are on the good side, which, in my opinion, of course, is Ukraine. I think that this is an unjust war, and I think that Russia, as a country, is fully responsible for what's happening. And I, as a Russian citizen, of course, I somehow share this responsibility. On the other hand, I don't see a positive scenario, unfortunately. I don't see what we can do. So if you take this example with Kirill Serebrennikov court hearings and all this, what are we to do? If the authorities, if the administrative body that is, whose responsibility it is to observe the law, blatantly abuses the law, who are you to address about this? Who is to come to your help? There isn't anyone. So technically, the only exit strategy from this is the only thing you can do is revolution, civil war, that is.
Yeah.
Something that, first, I'd very much like to avoid. And secondly, we don't have any resources to successfully do that, because Russia is the most heavily policed country in the world. We're not talking thousands, we're talking hundreds of thousands of heavily armed men ready to, just
clamp down.
Yeah, on anyone. And nowadays in Russia, it only takes you, if you, for example, you take a sheet of paper with something and you stand for 3 minutes in the street, you get snatched away, and it happens.
And this is one person.
Yes, one person.
It's not even like a group.
Which is not even illegal, even in Russia, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't stop them anymore. So it happens twice, and your third offense of this very sort turns you into a criminal offender. So we have had this, we already have a precedent. One person, Ildar Dadin, has been sent to prison for that. Luckily, he's now free, but that's like, that's the expression they use a lot in Russia. They're sending the signal. This is what's going to happen to you. Still people protest, still we have unsanctioned rallies, still we openly express our disagreements with all this. But, expressing one's disagreement obviously does not lead to any substantial, tangible results, sadly. And what might lead to substantial, tangible results is something that we're not capable of doing, because we don't have an army against that army. And like I said before, I don't want a war. I don't want another war in Russia. That would be a disaster. So hopefully it will resolve itself. Meanwhile, I believe that everyone should, as an individual, should behave decently. So being in Russia and being a Russian citizen, I think I should openly express my disagreement with these policies. As an artist, I think I should work across the boundaries and do everything I can to participate in everything, on all these beautiful things happening here. Not even because I feel it's my duty. No, because I'm enjoying it.
Yeah,
it's cool. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I wish we had some more time, but we've run out. Aleksandr, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I just want to wish you the best of luck with your project, and hopefully we'll see you back in Ukraine again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
So today on the programme we were speaking with the famous Russian composer and singer Aleksandr Manotskov. You're watching UATV.